Originally, I was going to come on here, and whether you know me from Fortnite or from a couple of Borderlands videos that I have done, originally I was going to come on here and kind of be upset with what they're doing to Borderlands. The last game I played like this that was so ill-conceived in the developers' minds when it comes to buffs and nerfs was Division 2, and it literally stopped me from playing the game because I spent all of that time farming and then they nerf everything I farmed for. No matter what you do as a developer, a meta is going to emerge. It doesn't matter. Even if you nerf everything into the ground, there will still be outliers that figure out the absolute mathematical best to a build. It's impossible to do it, and it ruins the fun in any game. Why, as a consumer, as a gamer, are you going to spend hours upon hours? I know somebody who has 900 red jabber clears just to find an anointed recurring hex. That's hours of gameplay, weeks of gameplay for one thing. These items are not easy to find, especially since the loot nerf that we received early in Borderlands 3's beginning time. All of this to say that they are trying to nerf things that do not need to be nerfed. There is no PvP within Borderlands 3. There is none. You do not have to be responsible for nerfing things because they're too strong and are creating an unfun experience for other gamers. That entire aspect that is a problem in Division and Destiny 2 does not exist here. I'm not completely sure why they have to continue to nerf things, and I just ran in there and tested a few things. And honestly, they're not even nerfing the correct things. I don't really normally read patch notes on this channel for any game that I play, except to point out a few key notes and points that I actually want to talk about. The first thing we're going to touch on here is, of course, the recurring hex and the Firestorm nerfs. The Hex and Firestorm were calibrated to the wrong grenade modifiers. These two grenades were envisioned to specialize by applying elemental dots to targets. Instead, they were resulting in large amounts of damage, and elemental dots were minimal. We realized this is a drastic change on both of these grenades, but we did not want to remove the spectacle of grenade, number of grenades that spawn, number of targets hit, etc., and focused on allowing their core identity to be emphasized instead of them continuing to be just high damage grenades. Let's be honest here. The problem here is Moze. Even though they have said that they did not intend for Moze to be an infinite healing, infinite grenade spamming character, if you make a Moze, that's the build you're most likely going for. It is the absolute most effective farm in the game if you're running Slaughter Shaft and you do not like to reload the game every 10 seconds to kill Grave Ward. Slaughter Shaft and a Moze is your best bet. You can solo the entire thing. You're basically invincible. This nerf was specifically targeted for that character, if we're being honest. And you can see the footage in the background. This was taken about 20 minutes ago. It didn't really affect it. All it really does is make me end up having to throw more grenades, but it doesn't matter because they're infinite, and basically just extending my time within each Slaughter Shaft, which isn't a good thing in any sense. A grinding game shouldn't be tedious grinding, it should be fun grinding. Since Borderlands 3 is so new and there's no raid, there's no new content coming that we know of, making it take a longer time to actually require the loot that we need is not a step in the right direction. However, just as a side note, if you are having this issue and your grenade is not doing what you want it to do, you can always use a Stormfront grenade that made it through the nerfs. It still hits for 3,000, acts very similar, except you have to aim it a little bit more. Another thing I want to touch on is the artifacts. This was a key component in many builds. It was reported that the legendary artifact Elemental Projector had a bug resulting in the max value being displayed at 183 instead of the actual max of 113. Therefore, we addressed the discrepancy and reduced the max value to 90%. Elemental Projector max damage rolled to 90%. That is over 100% like difference, or 50% different. It doesn't destroy the builds that they were used on. The issue is there's really no relic there's really no artifact that you're going to use instead of that. It works on every single character. It is the highest DPS that you can get unless you get an ungodly god-rolled relic that has everything on it that you're specifically looking for. There's nothing else in the game that comes close to even 183% max damage. And again, you're nerfing builds that it doesn't even matter. This again was targeted at probably Moze and Amara and a little bit of Flak maybe, but mainly Moze and Amara. I'll be honest, I've never played with a Zane, so I'm not sure what their kit can handle. You have all of these nerfs and negative things that people take hours upon hours to farm and grind, and then the thing that the community is actually asking for, things like Iron Bear, that needs to be reworked from the ground up. At level 10, it's your most powerful ability. At level whatever, it's completely useless. All of the anointed perks for Moze are useless. Jumping in and out of Iron Bear is a net loss, even with the increased damage you may get from an anointed perk on your weapon. Flak, this is a 50% increase in their health. I'm not sure exactly the numbers, but it's still not going to be really enough unless you spec into a complete tank pet build, but then you can't play Flak the way you want to. Having his pet available is fine. It gives you a 10% elemental damage boost or a little bit of damage reduction, but the actual damage it provides is null and void because it's dead all the time unless you spec into having the pet. Again, I've never played Zane, so I cannot speak upon that. But I know that these two, the people within the community have been asking for a very long time since release. And we get tiny little buffs here, but the things that no one asked to be touched get absolutely decimated. Now, again, this really doesn't affect Moze, and that's who was definitely targeted with the grenade. So they're not balancing the game properly. It's said all the time, but it's much harder to do. You should buff other characters instead of nerfing the overperforming ones, especially in a PvE game. Division 2 did the same exact kind of thing where you spent hours upon hours of grinding for gear just for the next month to nerf your build entirely. And you'd have to start basically from scratch. If you take hours upon hours of somebody's life, give them ample time to figure out or grind different gear. Don't just drop it on them on a hotfix at the drop of a hat and say, hey, those grenades you just killed the jabber for 900 times, yeah, they do less than 50% of their damage now. It's kind of insane that companies even do stuff like this. One thing that is a huge plus here is shield boosters were modified and are now set for auto pickup. That's enormous. There's certain shields in the game that drop 60% more shield boosters, drop damage boosters, and a bunch of other stuff that you used to have to stop what you're doing, press E on the booster, and for some reason they were very hard to target, and then you can pick it up that way. It is no longer the case. They are just auto pickup, so there could be some meta shifts there on what shields to use on certain characters. I know just randomly running around picking up 60% of my shield is definitely going to make me be pretty tanky in certain situations, allowing me maybe to move around a certain item or build within my build somewhere else. Not to mention on the huge nerfs that we got, we also have the Lyuda nerf, which is one of the best weapons in the game for boss killing. We have the Cutsman nerf by 25%. These aren't small numbers. They're not tweaking or adjusting numbers. They are full on making guns a quarter to half to 70% worse than they originally came off as. That sounds like you just didn't playtest your game enough to me, especially with the comment that they definitely said that Moze was never supposed to be a grenade throwing hero. However, why would you play Moze over Flak if you're going for a bottomless mag build? Flak's still going to out DPS her. Crit damage always wins in any video game ever made, and especially since you can constantly crit on Flak all the time. Why you're playing Moze for a specific reason. They do separate things even in this state. One does AoE damage. She's not good for Grave Ward unless you spec into bottomless mag. And then the other guy's a boss killer who's not that great in crowd control or anything like that. But that's it, guys. I just wanted to bring this to your attention. I think they're taking this game in a dangerous spot. I saw it happen in the Division 2. It killed the game and it killed the community and everyone was pissed. Hopefully they can kind of stop this and go in the other direction. I really love Borderlands 3. I love the 2 characters that I have maxed out. They have perfect builds, even with these nerfs. The nerfs aren't hitting the right parts of the game. Now my Flak just has a crappy grenade, but Moze still does what she does to the nth degree. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you on the next one. Have a good day. TikTak.